these games are considered masterpieces, but behind the scenes, they were a nightmare. Endless delays, disastrous decisions, and mistakes that cost fortunes, mental health, and nearly shut entire studios down. Today, you're going to discover the 10 games that almost destroyed their studios, and the last one on this list was responsible for one of the biggest crises in gaming history.
Your wife was brutally beaten with a socket wrench handle, then stomped to death. How do you think that looks, Jacob?
L.A. Noire is still impressive even today. The facial capture technology was so advanced that it felt like science fiction in 2011. But that ambition came at a brutal cost, and it nearly destroyed Team Bondi. 7 years of development followed. Constant creative shifts, endless rewrites, insanely expensive capture sessions, and a team trapped in constant crisis. Internal reports later revealed 12 to 14-hour workdays, severe burnout, and an extremely toxic leadership. The budget spiraled out of control multiple times, forcing Rockstar to step in and save the project. When the game finally launched, it was a success, but it was already too late. Team Bondi collapsed shortly after release.
There is a line men like us have to cross.
Spec Ops. The line is one of those games that was recognized too late. Smart, deep, and brutal, it messes with the player's mind and is now considered one of the best narrative shooters ever made. But commercially, the game underperformed. Yager invested heavily. A mature story, detailed environments, high-quality voice acting, and a campaign that constantly challenges the player. The problem was marketing. The game was sold as just another military shooter. Players expected a Call of Duty and instead got a direct critique of the fantasy of war. Sales were below expectations, and the game didn't have the commercial impact it deserved at launch. Over time, however, Spec Ops, the line gained recognition and became a cult classic. A game ahead of its time, brilliant in its ambition, and misunderstood when it mattered most. Tomb Raider is one of the best reboots in gaming history. Stunning visuals, refined gameplay, and a more human Lara Croft earned critical acclaim. The game shows her transformation from a survivor into an iconic hero. Development was challenging, mechanics were revised, the story's tone shifted, and the team faced intense pressure. Square Enix invested heavily, aiming for a major success. When it sold 3.4 million copies in its first month, it was a solid number, but below expectations due to the high budget. The game introduced innovative climbing, combat, and storytelling mechanics, influencing future action-adventure titles. Critical success saved the franchise, allowing Crystal Dynamics to continue the series with Rise of the Tomb Raider and Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Today, the 2013 reboot is remembered as an example of how to modernize a classic, balancing story, gameplay, and visuals for a new generation. Doom is fast, brutal, and unforgettable, but few people realize how close it came to never being released. What players experienced was the result of years of uncertainty and hard decisions behind the scenes. Early in development, the project was internally nicknamed Call of Doom. The game was highly cinematic, slower than expected, and lacked a clear identity, trying to follow industry trends instead of defining its own path. Inside ID Software, the team was unhappy with the direction. Large parts of the game were scrapped more than once. Each restart burned time and money, and confidence continued to drop. At one point, Bethesda seriously considered canceling the project, putting the future of the Doom franchise at risk. Everything changed with a bold decision, restarting almost from scratch in the final years of development. The team returned to the core of Doom: speed, aggression, and gameplay above all else. The risk was massive, but it paid off. Doom 2016 revived the franchise and proved that sometimes the only way to save a project is to throw everything away and start again.
Bring us the girl and wipe away the debt. That was the deal.
BioShock Infinite is a brilliant game, but its development came at a huge cost. Ken Levine rewrote the project countless times. Entire mechanics were built and discarded, characters cut, and systems abandoned. The game's vision kept shifting, causing years of delays. The budget ballooned, and the pressure on the team was extreme. Heavy crunch, constant stress, and severe burnout marked the process. When the game finally launched, it was a critical and commercial success. But Irrational Games was exhausted. The problem wasn't money, but an unsustainable development model. Shortly after release, Take-Two restructured the studio. Irrational Games was dramatically scaled down, ending the studio in its original form. BioShock Infinite remains a striking example in the industry. Sometimes creating something amazing doesn't guarantee surviving the process that made it. When No Man's Sky was released in 2016, expectations were sky high. The game promised infinite exploration, living planets, multiplayer, and a revolutionary sci-fi experience. However, in reality, the game failed to deliver on many of its promises. Key features were missing, and bugs and performance issues were widespread. The result was devastating: harsh reviews, mass refunds, and much lower than expected sales. The small developer Hello Games was almost pushed to the brink financially by the initial failure. Instead of abandoning the project, the team chose to fix the issues and continuously expand the game. Over the years, they released updates that added real multiplayer, improved graphics, fixed bugs, and introduced new modes and content. Today, No Man's Sky has become a cult success, showing how a company can recover and turn a disastrous launch into a long-term triumph.
I'm in.
Find a way to make him trust you. We want the Red Poles, the lieutenants, all of them.
Do whatever it takes.
Sleeping Dogs was praised by critics and loved by players, but that success didn't translate into the numbers Square Enix expected. The game had a high budget and a heavy marketing push, yet it still sold below the publisher's internal targets. Square Enix officially labeled its performance as disappointing. Because of this, the planned sequel was shelved, leaving United Front Games in a period of uncertainty. Ongoing projects were canceled, the team was reduced, and the publisher's confidence in the studio quickly faded. The studio tried to reinvent itself with new projects, including Triad Wars, but none were able to turn things around. Struggling to recover, United Front Games eventually shut down in 2016. In the end, Sleeping Dogs became more than just a beloved game. It became a stark reminder of how even a critically acclaimed title can mark the beginning of the end for a studio.
My son detected.
Grab him. Hey, what are you doing?
The Callisto Protocol, released in 2022, is a third-person survival horror game directed by one of the creators of Dead Space. The story takes place on Callisto, a moon of Jupiter, where you play as Jacob Lee, a prisoner trapped inside a high-security space prison after a mysterious infection turns inmates into horrifying creatures. The game focuses heavily on atmosphere, body horror, and brutal combat, combining melee attacks, firearms, and a gravity-based mechanic. Visually, it's highly cinematic and technically impressive, but it was criticized for its slow pacing, repetitive combat, and technical issues at launch. Despite its ambition and strong production values, the game's massive budget and underwhelming sales turned it into a commercial failure, ultimately impacting the studio's future.
Order says your original pilot was KIA.
Correct. Captain Ty Lastimosa was killed in action. I am now linked to an acting pilot.
Titanfall 2 is considered one of the best FPS games of the decade, praised by critics and loved by players, especially for its brilliant single-player campaign and innovative multiplayer. However, the game suffered from a poorly timed release by its own publisher. EA decided to launch Titanfall 2 on October 28, 2016, right between Battlefield 1 and Call of Duty: Infinite Warfare, two of the biggest FPS franchises on the market. As a result, initial sales fell below expectations, and the financial return was much lower than the publisher had anticipated. This ended up compromising the franchise's expansion plans and weakening Respawn's strategic position within EA. Even with critical acclaim and fan support, Titanfall 2 couldn't overcome the calendar problem. Today, the game is remembered not only as a classic, but also as an example of how a poorly timed release can hurt even a promising title and a studio's trajectory.
Be my man. You made it. You blowing up all over the news. Are you alone?
I just want the money.
Cyberpunk is the most famous modern disaster in the gaming industry. Extreme crunch, unrealistic expectations, misleading marketing, broken versions, massive bugs, and terrible performance on base consoles. The chaos was so severe that the game was removed from the PSN, something almost unprecedented. Players received mass refunds. CDPR's stock plummeted. The company became the target of international lawsuits. Internally, the entire structure had to be reorganized. Parallel projects were canceled, release dates were pushed back, and entire departments were restructured. If the game had not recovered through updates and the Phantom Liberty expansion, CD Projekt would have faced one of the worst financial scenarios in its history. Internally, the entire structure had to be reorganized. Parallel projects were canceled, release dates were pushed back, and entire departments were restructured. If the game had not recovered through updates and the Phantom Liberty expansion, CD Projekt would have faced one of the worst financial scenarios in its history. So, guys, those were some examples of incredible games that, even though they were loved, faced major crises due to release timing or management decisions. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any content about fascinating stories from the gaming world. Comment below which of these games you've played, or if you know any other similar cases. See you in the next video.